time. It's our time, my friends. Time for millions of maturepreneurs, 55 plus, who are hashtag not done by a long shot, to revolutionize how we lead, do business, and innovate our world. I'm your host, Jeanette Anderson, and welcome to my conversations with fascinating people who would rather inspire than retire. You know, one of the biggest challenges in entrepreneurship is the limiting beliefs that we hold as entrepreneurs. I often say that my specialty is getting the 4 inches between your ears working so that the business can work. The reality is, as entrepreneurs, our limiting beliefs become the business's limitations. And often, many of us have self-sabotaging or self-critical perspectives that we learned as a young child. We adopted, from parents or family or various different inputs. And we've been telling crappy stories about ourselves, other people, the world ever since. Now, I often say to my clients, we're making it all up anyways, so we might as well make up a better story when we are telling stories that are not helpful, that don't help us be more effective, that don't help us be who we want to be in the world, that get in the way of us doing what we do and having what we want to have. Today's guest on the podcast, Shawn Mahshie, is talking all about that. How to stop the self-criticism, the self-abandonment, leaving ourselves and judging ourselves and being harsh with ourselves, to shifting that to real, true self-love, self-agency, self-advocacy. How do we make that shift in reality, not just notionally? That's what we're going to be talking about today, and it's pretty foundational for success of any kind, in any walk of life, at any stage of life. So please join us for this interesting conversation about how you're the one who left yourself in the past. How do you come back home to yourself going forward? Take care, and I look forward to having you on the podcast. And please do share this episode with others. Thanks so much. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Maturepreneur Podcast. I'm your hostess, Jeanette Anderson, and today I'm grateful to welcome Shawn. I forgot to ask you if it's pronounced Mahshie. How do I pronounce your last name?
It actually looks like Mahshie with M-A-H-S-H-I-E, but it's Mahshie. Think Mahshie. Mashed potatoes.
Okay, Mahshie. I almost always remember to ask when I'm not sure, but so welcome, Shawn. I'm glad you're here and joining us. And today we're going to be talking about self-forgiveness, self-awareness, self-support, and basically how to not sabotage ourselves and move into self-advocacy and self-support. So I think it's a very valuable topic. So let me just quickly tell you a little bit about Shawn, but we're going to have more information in the show notes so you can check it out. So Shawn is a self-forgiveness coach, author, retreat leader, and creator of the Wheel of Self-Forgiveness. At 70 plus, which is hard to believe, Shawn is not speaking about reinvention from the sidelines. She's actively living it. Her work helps women stop turning on themselves with regret, self-criticism, and second-guessing so they can reclaim the confidence, energy, and inner authority to keep building what matters to them. So today we're going to explore how self-forgiveness helps women, and I suspect men too, stay visible, viable, and valued in their next chapter. So valuable conversation. I think it's going to be very important for many listeners. So, and what might be the case for some of you is that you may not recognize it as self-sabotage or not being present to ourselves or not supporting ourselves. So listen for these clues about how that can look, how that can manifest, and what we can do about it, because that's what we're going to be talking about today. So Shawn, tell me first, how did you get into this work? What is this work about for you?
Well, thanks for having me. First of all, I love your work, and there's so much out here that I see that the entrepreneurship and moving into sharing all that we've learned and the passions that we're driven to share as the graduate school of spiritual development, even if you've worked through codependence in your marriage and with your grown children. Entrepreneurship brings right there to you what it is that you have, your precious gifts you're giving to the world. And, like, are you going to buy them? Do you like me enough? So it will, the journey itself is so productive, and yet most people don't necessarily know what to do with it. And what I deal in is what I call the symmetry principle, how to harness whatever can still trigger you, and entrepreneurship will bring it as your direct path out of that, as your direct path to peace, self-evolution, and thriving. And something I felt most of us didn't get along the way, despite the long spiritual journey. For me, we didn't get that. And so for me, it's a very broad topic, but I'm narrowing it down today to the part that is most personal to me as someone, to answer your question, who grew up with a mom who was very critical of herself, but also of others and of us as children. My brain became wired in a big way to beat myself up, to turn on myself, to abandon myself. And when you were saying, watch for this thing that you may not even realize you're doing, self-abandonment is actually a diagnosis in the therapy world. And it is what we address. It is what I believe to be an epidemic in our society, both men and women. And yet we're focusing in on women here. And these tools will help anyone, though, any entrepreneur, any parent, or just person. But because I was not able to overcome the harsh self-criticism, the just turning on myself, the minute things didn't go how I had planned, the minute someone was upset or disappointed, or just leaving a meeting and beating myself up for what I should have said or what I shouldn't have said, my mind was just always looking for the thing. And no one in decades of therapy, inner work, I could cite the spiritual journey chapter, line and verse. None of it helped. And finally, I stumbled on something, 3 simple steps that made all the difference. Stopped beating myself up almost completely 12 years ago, and I've shared it with thousands. So that's the why, getting it out there to help those who don't have a way out when they are so cruelly turning on themselves.
So your why really is that you know the pain of that self-abuse and you don't want other people to experience that. So that's part of why you've created your systems and processes and the work that you've done. A lot of times.
It really is.
Go ahead.
It really is such a tender journey, because these moments got started when we were children, and we either interpreted a busy parent or someone who was loud, abusive, scary, in ways that we couldn't point the finger at the elephant in the room. We really learned to turn it on ourselves. And we truly believed that if I just beat myself up enough, I'll do better next time. But it doesn't help us do better. It just tears us down.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's many things you just said that I really agree with and want to underline. One is, I think there's no better personal growth course, program, or anything on the planet better than entrepreneurship for us to learn where our edges are, where our issues are, where the anchors are, where our limiting beliefs are. And also to develop the strengths and to see the beauty and to be able to share our gifts and to be able to be self-expressed. So it's a fabulous journey, but not an easy one. Any self-growth, any putting ourselves out in the world is not necessarily easy. So what's something about...
Do you mind if I add one thing there? So despite my journey, which I was speaking on world stages, had a big career in Washington, D.C., a book published in 30 languages long before the internet, because it hit the nail on the head that was changing the field I worked in. It was such that everything looked good on the outside, but I was really crushing myself on the inside. And throughout that recovery from that physical crash, which had me on disability for 15 years, every form of Eastern, Western, Ayurveda, yoga, therapy, all of it, I still couldn't get through these most tender parts. Affirmations, the mindfulness part sounded good in the beginning, but those little thoughts that were driving the bus were survival driven. They didn't want me just to observe them and send them off. They wanted to be held in my heart. And this work helps us expose the errors in logic of the thinking that got wired so early. And we actually can't steamroll over or change our thinking if it's survival driven. This process allows it to see for itself that that was never true to start with, and then it falls away of its own accord. And I watch people in every single session go from being very triggered to, oh, I can't find the emotional charge anymore, and I know exactly what my steps are as my path to freedom. So as you were saying, it's a deep and tender journey, and yet no one had really given me the tools despite all of that.
Hey, well, I really want to talk about the tools and those 3 tips you mentioned, but tell us just a little bit about your journey. So what was the work you did in Washington, and what was that book? And then what took you to entrepreneurship?
Well, that was a completely different field. Growing up in Iowa had nothing to do with deaf people at all. But when I joined a volunteer service organization with the Mennonite Church long ago, during the Vietnam War, in fact, and stumbled into serving a deaf person who was teaching mentally retarded adults, learned sign language, came to the first master's degree program at Gallaudet University in sign language linguistics. And so I saw that deaf children were not being provided with a first language in the United States because of the medical model, and wrote a book about that based on what was happening in Sweden and Denmark. And that book changed everything around the world so that was a completely different field. It was such a labor of love. And because I was what I would now call a pretzel person, still turning myself into a pretzel at home, and with my boss and my husband mostly, even though here I was known in my field, and yet at home I was draining my energy and ended up crashing, partly because of turning on myself. I believe our immune system actually follows suit. If our minds are beating ourselves up, our body starts to too. So the people that have autoimmune disorders tend to be the ones that are turning on themselves. And, renowned researcher David Hawkins places guilt, shame, regret, those states where we turn on ourselves on his energetic scale. He has those at the very bottom, even below fear and apathy. And my business, we are taking on those lowest states of energy, those hardest to overcome, and the ones that will, as you said, secretly sabotage our vision, our business, where we know we need to go, and yet somehow we're getting in our own way. And we're also giving ourselves away. One of my courses is called the Get You Back Boot Camp, because of the number of people that really lost themselves along the way, their creative, energetic spark, and especially in marriage, it can happen. You're really, who am I? I've really lost that. So yeah, it's all tied together.
Exactly. Okay, so that's a very different field, very interesting, and I think it's very connected in terms of your purpose of really supporting people to be seen and heard and valued, and not marginalized or shut away. And so now you're doing that work, but in a different way for a different audience. Tell me a little bit about the transition into your entrepreneurial journey. What made you decide to make the leap to starting your own business? That was about 12 years ago. You moved into coaching officially. What made you decide to make that leap in your 50s?
Yeah, recovering from chronic illness and pain completely, where I actually have boundless energy now. I don't even get tired. It's an unusual thing. I wanted so much to share that with others. Once I got what I call the missing piece, PEACE, we were never taught, or at least I wasn't, and a lot of people weren't, were these very direct, simple paths to unraveling the thinking. And it happened when I first learned the work of Byron Katie, instantly saw that it was different for me. I had already been doing 12-step programs on food addiction and on a number of, anything related to codependence, Al-Anon, all of those, any kind of addictive process that is about turning it over. And yet I saw that this work was even much more direct than a 4th step in 12-step programs, and decided, okay, I'm going to learn that. I'm going to go straight to the top of her, whatever she offers people for my own recovery. I didn't do it to be a coach, but I knew, in the same way that I helped change the field of deaf education, I need to get this out there for everyone to hear. So that was the process. I thought I was going to only write about it, but then started using it as coaching and retreats. Started writing immediately, but the books didn't really get, I've got 4 books that aren't published because we were so busy serving people with my happiness hacks, the smaller ebooks. But yeah, it was just, there were some moments though where I stumbled on this 3-step process, and we can talk about that later when we get to that part. But it almost was not a choice. It was, I'm just doing this. I can't not do it.
A calling. It was a compulsion, even by the sounds of it. Okay, and often for many people, especially those who are purpose-led or purpose-driven, there tends to be this, not really an option, I'm just got to go do this thing now. What was the hardest part of making that transition for you, for starting your business? What was the hardest thing for you in that initial stages? Because it's very different being in a career to being an entrepreneur. So what was the biggest shift for you?
It's funny because I heard you say that you started the lemonade stand at age 6. Well, I won the seed selling contest in kindergarten. So I think I was always an entrepreneur. And even when I was in a career, had my finger on the pulse of where deaf education needed to go, in a way that I was always bumping up against the people above me, particularly because that university was also run by Congress. So as administrators changed, we had to do. So that was part of what caused my health to crash, I would believe, is knowing where we needed to go, but constantly, I was dragging the field of deaf education on my back, kicking and screaming, and went there, but at the cost to my health. And so I would say, when I look back on the biggest challenges, it has been that knowing the symmetry principle, which is what I named it. It is this thing that I didn't know before, how to use whatever upsets me as a path to peace, which became the beginning of the end of fear. Knowing I had that meant everybody I worked with in retreats and were getting all the problems. So people in entrepreneurship, well, what problem do you solve? What do your people want? I said, well, they just want to not feel bad. And they want the problem of whatever they want. We can take care of that. And I have lots of testimonials as Shawn can help anybody with anything, but that doesn't work in online marketing because you keep being told to niche down. And because the biggest, most personal gift I have is the wheel of self-forgiveness, something no one was able to give me. That is what we have finally pivoted to, even just in the last year as the book is coming out, to really focus on self-abandonment and moving from self-sabotage to what I call self-solidarity. So yeah, but that challenge in the business of wanting to just give everything to everybody, just kind of shooting myself in the foot in a way.
Yeah, that is often a big challenge for a lot of people, is to figure out, who do we serve? How do we serve them? What's the problem we solve? And how do we solve that problem? And how do we convey that in a way that we don't sound like everybody else? Is a really big challenge for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Well, keeping it authentic to us, and not just some kind of marketing fluff. Okay, well, let's talk about, so tell us, define the symmetry principle, and then let's talk about those 3 paths to unraveling the thinking and the 3 tips. So what is the symmetry principle?
So based on originally the work of Byron Katie and then morphing into using it for self-forgiveness, I developed what I call the no matter what way. So no matter what happens, no matter who leaves, no matter who's angry, you use that. You use not what they're doing, but your reaction to that as as a way to rewire the thinking that's causing the reaction. So the whole thing is based on the fact that every single emotional reaction is based on our mind is telling us something. It's telling us that's what happens and it means blank. And as you question your thoughts, you start to realize your mind doesn't know what's happening at all. The whole thing is hypotheses, but mostly it is recycled programming that got started at a very young age when you didn't know what was going on. You know how babies are so focused, they learn so fast, they're just in the moment, they laugh, they cry, they sleep, they poop, they want to be held, they play, they learn all of that. And then somewhere along the line, something happens where they go, uh-oh, something's wrong with me. And it's survival driven. I need to be this, I need to do that in order to get taken care of. And the mind makes a decision. Okay, I got to do this. I got to be this. And then that's like the birth of codependence. We're shuttling back and forth between the reaction of that person and saying, oh, I did it right because they're happy, or I did it wrong. I'm bad. I got to beat myself up. When in fact, that original assessment of what you need to be and do was probably wrong to start with. It was based on a very spiritually immature, not judgmental immature, but just you didn't know what was going on, your mind. So to really rewrite history, where to use Eric Berne's model of parent, adult, child, where there's critical parent and nurturing parent, adult is very present in the moment, and child that started out as free child, it becomes adapted child and rebellious child. So we've all been bouncing around lots of times between critical parent, adapted child where we do whatever we think we need to do, and rebellious child who says, screw that, I don't want to be that. So this takes away those states so that you're living in nurturing parent, mostly in your adult, just dealing with life as it comes, solving problems, and letting free child and all its energy and creativity to support that because it hasn't been shut down. Sorry, that sounds so theoretical, but honestly, once you are able to, we take a very simple situation where somebody says something and all of a sudden you're really upset, or you lash back at them, or you say something you later regret. And we go back to that moment. What was I thinking and believing? And through this process, instead of the thinking and believing getting spewed onto them or turned on yourself, you get it on paper very clearly. Then with the work of Byron Katie, you would go through 4 simple questions and you turn the thought around. And the symmetry is finding that you're doing to yourself and others whatever you thought was being done to you, and that you actually don't need that person or situation to change in order to be happy and free. But it's a way of finding your part without beating yourself up. That's what was so good for me, because the thinking driving it is innocent. You can't see it another way because you're looking through that lens. So this allows that thinking to go, oh, well, that was never true to start with. I know that sounds kind of maybe complex, but it's very simple. You just grab the situation. There's a very simple way to get the thoughts on paper with a structure. It's like a brain dump. You finally listening to you can say anything you want on there that you wouldn't be able to say to others. And then each one of those thoughts is what was driving your upset. So it's really amazing how much other people appear to change when we become self-contained in these ways, and we take care of our own side of the street. We can handle a lot that we couldn't have handled before.
Absolutely. So for those of you who may not know, Byron Katie is a lady, and she has something called The Work. If you Google The Work, you'll find videos, and there's a one-page, I call it a one-page workshop, personal growth workshop in one page. It's a simple process that you can walk yourself through. Watch a couple of the videos on how to do it. to become, like you said, more self-aware, but also to really what it is about loosening our attachments to the story that we're telling and recognizing that it is a story we're telling about something. It's not necessarily
Right.
truth of it or of us or of the other person, and what might also be true, what might be a better story to tell to allow ourselves to have peace or contentment or happiness or be self-grounded.
Right. And we of course, teach all of that
Yeah,
too at the retreats. And within the context of this, that part is more about judgment of others and feeling like a victim of your circumstances or of others' choices and behaviors. And then the other half of this, no matter what way, that is the part where you're turning on yourself, but that uses the work as the skill too. So it's
right.
all put together in the way of a simple way to question the thinking that's driving every form of upset. Also tied in with post-traumatic stress trauma from childhood or later, and that by questioning the thinking, we do release a lot of those traumas. So even though I was doing so much somatic work, I still wasn't getting better until I learned how to truly free the thinking, and it got really quiet in there, and then my health just took off and everything healed itself. So
And so what was that process? What are those 3 tips or that journey that you went through?
well, as I said, the work was part of it. I became certified as one of just a handful of people in the world who trained in this work specifically, and I still was beating myself up though. And then the entrepreneurial journey is actually part of what brought me out of it. Early on, we're all taught to do webinars and those kinds of things. And I had sent out an email broadcast and worked really hard on it. And then I love baths. A lot of my big shifts happen in bathtubs. So here it was a February night, candles around me, a bubble bath, and I sunk into there to celebrate that. All right, the webinar's tomorrow. I got out the last promotion. And then my mind just went, that's what I would do, sort of and it went, oh no, you shouldn't have sent it out tonight. You should have waited till morning. You shouldn't have, all of the shouldn't have, which had plagued my life. It went right there, as always. And usually once I had gone there, I would be up half the night or all night, beating myself up, rethinking it. But I didn't. It only lasted a couple minutes. And then I was like, well, what happened? What did I do? How did I get out of this? And so I took some time and went back and started breaking it down and found 3 distinct steps, which were first called the Wheel of Self-Love. But since that's what it does, move you into a very unconditional type of self-love, since our brain is a condition generator, the ways we can spot those conditions. But we ended up wanting to really reach the people who were hard on themselves. So the name changed to Wheel of Self-Forgiveness. And I was able to see, which I don't know if I would call it advice necessarily. I hope you all will get the book when it comes out, because it will take you from whatever you're believing you did wrong or that you're being hard on yourself, whether it's a tiny thing or a really big life regret. The first part that was most important to me is finding my own innocence, not leaving it out there in the hands of other people, forgiving me in the hands of whatever society says, of whatever my mind says I shoulda, woulda, could have done, because my mind was expert at finding it every time.
Yeah.
To be able to go back to the moment you did that thing. And I went back to the moment I hit send on the email. What was I thinking and believing?
Mm-hmm.
And again, under all of this is the idea we don't create the thoughts. Many people out there in the spiritual journey will say, oh, well, your thinking is like a buffet, just choose different thoughts. Well, no, you'll notice your thinking just pops in and it's there, and that's what you're looking through. You didn't say, I think I think this now. So given the lens I was looking through, I believed it was best to send it out that night. And so rather than beating myself up, I stood with, by, and for myself and said, no, I am not going to use hindsight or my mind's cruel weapon of self-destruction, regret, against myself. I'm going to stay with that me that I was in that moment. And you can use that going all the way back to decisions about parenting. I mean, clients of mine work through some of the hardest, wishing they had handled something differently that's had a bad outcome for themselves or others. So the second part is to face the fear. The reason you go into regret is you fear a bad outcome to start with. And just even the label of it is bad. Our mind is a worst case outcome generator that is, it's primed for survival. You know, there's that saber-toothed tiger around the corner. We have to act out of that worst case place. But you see, as part of that, that you don't have a crystal ball. No, you don't know that it's going to go that badly. You say, but what if it already is? What if that person was already hurt? What if this one's already mad at me? And say, can you absolutely know for sure that that's a bad thing? Does our mind really know what's being accomplished in any given moment? And if it's a very deep, hard thing, then that question takes you further. That's where we use the work. And true for me, it was fearless faith, finally. No matter how much work I had done in church spirituality, I still didn't know what trusting reality, turning myself over to something greater really meant until I was able to question, get my monkey mind out of the role of playing God and trust the me that showed up, trust whatever outcome, as I cannot know what's being accomplished on a grander scale. And then the third part is finding out, what do you feel you want or need from others or life so that you can move on, get past this, forgive yourself? And in that case, I wanted the old timers to not feel they had been overrun by emails. I wanted the new people to understand what I was saying and know that I had something different than everybody else. I wanted them to love everything I sent out. I wanted them to invest in what I had to give. So I gave all that to myself. I started investing more in what I had to give. I started loving everything I sent out, even if it had typos. I started trusting, that it was exactly as it needed to be in any given moment, and that I wasn't the decider of what reality should be. So that's what that step 3 is, where you really move into becoming your own hero, into real, true self-solidarity, saying, I am not going to use hindsight to beat myself up and abandon myself and cause the crash of my health, my marriage. And in fact, Kristen Neff's research shows that people in relationships with someone who is self-deprecating are less happy than the people in relationships with someone who is kind to themselves. We say, oh, I'm not mean to my husband, I just beat myself up. Or my children was like, no, my mom beating herself up was horrible for me. I would have done anything to make her stop. And so to be able to be in that place where we are taking care of our side of the street, we're making amends to the one. I always say, you're the one who left. You're the one who needs to come home.
Oh, that's a great line, that last line. You're the one who left. You're the one
who left yourself, who abandoned yourself.
Yes, yeah. That's I got tingles on that one. So
That's
okay,
where they get you back boot camp is, yeah.
So to write her down, or folks, you're the one who left yourself. You're the one who needs to come home. Okay.
I like to say who gets to come home, the privilege of being the curious, compassionate caretaker of those littlest parts of you that nobody else can do it. We keep giving it away. It's like, no, it doesn't matter. They're not the ones.
So there's so much richness in what you were just talking about. So I'm just going to kind of summarize to make sure that I heard pieces of it correctly. In the 3 kind of steps or aspects or parts of the process, one was coming back and finding your own innocence. So what was I thinking or believing, and how do I stand by, with, and for myself, which I think is a lovely line as well. So really just understanding that we are always doing the best we can, and that was coming from that space, right? And
yes.
we did what we knew at the time, and almost always with great intentions or good intentions. And so really recognizing that and trusting it. And the second one was facing the fear and really taking a look at, What is it that we are scared of happening? What do we think is the worst case scenario? What is it that we, think is going to be the bad outcome? And then what I really heard you say was entrusting the process, the process of life, God, ourselves. We have our back. Have always been okay. We will be okay. And that even in the face of that fear, taking a look and saying, is this reasonable? Is this realistic? Is this something that is happening as opposed to
Right.
just a fear?
And I just want to add, for me, I wasn't able to do that at all over decades of inner work without the four simple questions that Byron
Yes.
Katie
Yes.
gifted us, which is it true? Can I absolutely know it's true? How do I react when I believe that thought? Take the focus off this bad thing you think is happening. It's the thought that creates your
Yeah.
reaction. And
Yeah.
the genius question, who would I be in the same moment going forward after that thing I said or did that I regret? Who would I be without the thought that it's a bad thing, that my mind knows what was supposed to happen instead? My mind truly believed it was in charge of what should have happened. But to trust that's all we have is the reality that showed up. And our mind is just arguing with that and trying to assert the illusion of control.
Yes, absolutely. And then number three is, what do you feel you want from others in life? So what do we need? And then how can we be the source of that for ourselves? How can we start being the source of what we need and want so that we have the experience of having that? So, if you want to
Yeah.
feel more loved, then be more loving, and therefore you're going to feel more loved.
And it is very specific. A lot of people talk about self-love. It's not about drinking your lemon water and meditating for 20 minutes. It's about, where do you do this thing to yourself? You wouldn't be triggered by other people doing it unless it was already an inside job. So it gives you those cravings for other people to see us, know that had the best intentions, all of that. It needs to come from ourselves. Lots of times they're not even thinking that, we're believing they are, but even if they are, you're the one.
Yeah.
And it's amazing what happens to those littlest parts of you on the inside, is what I call them, when you're on your own side.
Yeah.
They've been getting beat up, not by other people, but by your own mind, your own inner critic. And
Yeah.
we say, turn your inner critic into the champion of your happiness.
Oh, that's another great writer downer. Turn your inner critic into the champion of your own happiness. I can't write fast enough. Yeah, I often say to my clients that it's not, and myself, it's not other people's judgment of me. It's when I agree with them that it becomes a problem. And so they can
Right.
judge me till the cows come home. But if I don't think it's true, it doesn't land. It's only,
How we talk in business about ROI, and this is about really COI, the cost of inaction. How do I react when I believe that thought? Oh my goodness, catalog all of that. That's where it is sort of like a 4-step and 12-step programs. What do I say? What do I do? What goes on in my body? Whose business am I in? I've left myself and I'm wanting them to change. All of that gets cataloged really quickly. That's when the mind goes, oh, we are wired to go toward pleasure and away from pain. The mind has to witness that thought caused me pain, and it won't keep creating that thought, but it has to see it, because it thought that the thing is helping you.
yeah,
That's why the very simple, very systematic helps to unravel that, because it's survival driven and it thinks it's helping you by hammering you with these same thoughts, when in fact it has to see, oh, when I believe that thought, I get all these bad outcomes. Take the thought away, I would be fine. I would be seeing the other person over there and their innocence. The worst they're doing is believing their thoughts too.
right, right. Oh,
It really, really is amazing in business too, the ways that we beat ourselves up for how we handled a client or something didn't go the way we wanted, making decisions and taking risks. I think our biggest fear, when I was so indecisive for so long, it wasn't about the bad outcome. It was about the outcome that I would beat myself up. So once I stopped beating myself up, I became very decisive. Just throw the dice and, and analyze it the best I can and take that leap of faith. So it really helps a lot in running a business to be on your own side.
Oh, love that. Okay, there is so many rich pieces of the various different little nuggets that you've thrown out here. How do people connect with you and find out more about what you do? And tell us about the gift you have for them.
Oh, thank you. Well, ShawnMahshie.com, but since it's a challenging spelling, it's also my business name, ThriveThisTime.com will get you there as well. But that's sort of the whole thing. If we want to just get you to, let's just stay with this, wheelofself-forgiveness.com. And that'll take you to the page on my main website that lets you download the free gift. I believe also that Jeanette will have it in her
Vault.
vault.
Yeah. So
And
you can
so, but when you download that, we also make you part of letting you know when the book is coming out. Maybe you get to be part of our launch team, which gives you an advanced reader copy and time some workshops and things with me too as the book is coming out. So you really can put this into, we work in specific situations. You will watch people in the space of 20 minutes turn around something they've regretted for 20 years. So it's amazing to have this Wheel of Self-Forgiveness with a dash, self-forgiveness.com.
Okay, awesome. So by all means, go and get that. And the book is coming out in August. So whenever you're hearing this podcast, make sure you go and search for the book, The Wheel of Self-Forgiveness. Is that the one that it's coming out in August?
Well, we
What
hope so,
title?
and you know how that goes. So I think I will have parts as I'm speaking at conferences for therapists in late August, but that may just be the author copy. It may not be launched on Amazon for almost 2 months after that, but we will get you a copy sooner, and you can be part of the launch experience if you'd like. It's when you download it, we'll let you know
What's the
about it.
title of the book going to be?
We kept it simple. The Wheel of Self-Forgiveness, 3 steps to unconditional self-love, self-confidence, and self-advocacy.
Okay, awesome. Love that. So whoever is listening, please do go to the vault. There is a link in the show notes. There's also more information about Shawn in the show notes and all of her connections there. In the vault, you're going to find not only Shawn's gift, but also the gifts from all of our other guests, and you can download all of those for free. So please do go and check that out. Or you can go directly to her site, wheelofself-forgiveness.com. Thank you so much, Shawn, for being here. There's so many things I would still love to dive deeper with you because there was a lot of juicy wisdom in many of the different tips that you said there. Tell me one thing that because you mentioned this might be a good question for you. What's one thing you had to unlearn as you moved into this stage of work that you're doing? What was one of the things that held you back the most that you needed to unlearn or let go of?
I want to answer that question, and I also want to say for people who are interested in our waterfront retreats on the Chesapeake Bay, when you do Wheel of Self-Forgiveness, it takes you to the main website, and there will be there for courses and retreats and private coaching, executive coaching, all of that's there. So this doesn't limit you to that if you're interested in some of the other things I was talking about. What I had to unlearn was the very thing I teach. I had to unlearn the thinking that was sabotaging me and that was causing me to make myself not enough, wrong, all of it. Yeah. So I finally learned how to unlearn the thinking that was getting in my way.
Beautiful. And for those of you who are doing some of that self-exploration work, by all means, please check out Shawn's offerings. If you are looking to learn what you do want going forward in the future, what is your vision for the future? What is your purpose? Now, my definition of purpose is not that what you do, but we'll learn about that. It's more about why you do what you do. So if you're looking to find out what that is, then by all means, check out the Clarity Compass workshop, which is coming up soon. And you can get that from going to the website maturepreneur.world. So Clarity Compass workshop to help you figure out how your purpose and to create income and impact after 55.
That's good.
So thank you so much for being here, Shawn. What's one last piece of wisdom you'd like to leave people with?
I would just say that feeling better is easier than you thought. Even if you've been at it for a long time and you have a sense, no, there's still something there. I know that I haven't quite gotten there. So for me, this work, like the sixth step of my no matter what way, is enjoy your evolution and embrace its edge. Whatever is the edge of that envelope of your evolution is happening for you, not to you. And you've heard that before, but I didn't know what to do with it. So once you know this, you're either loving life or using what hurts to wake yourselves up. So trust that there are simple ways out. And in my case, and a lot of other cases, they may also greatly impact your health, your relationships, your emotional reactions. Feeling better is easier than you think.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for being here. And I love the passion you have for supporting people and coming back home to themselves. And that message that really resonated with me. You're the one that left yourself. And so you're the one who gets to come back home to yourself using the tools that are available to us to support us in really seeing ourselves and life differently. So
I believe it is our greatest spiritual privilege to really return to self-love in ways that, we haven't been able to do, to keep waking up to. We are the perfect manifestation of what is here in any given moment, and that leads us to, greater connection and peace.
It's a beautiful concept. It's a spiritual privilege to return to self-love. Thank you for listening today, and please do subscribe so you don't miss any juicy episodes going forward. Have a wonderful week, everybody. Bye for now. Thank you for listening. I'd love it if you left a comment and subscribed. And I encourage you to apply one aha from this interview right away so you can turn your wisdom into wealth and your contribution into positive change. Bye for now.